Everybody good and dry this morning? Say amen.
Amen.
Hey, I want to thank you guys for making it out. I know it is rough. We have a lot of people still living on blocked roads and closed roads, and a lot of our folks from Missouri, a lot of them were able to make it down, some weren't. So just as a church, let's be in prayer for those that have been affected by all the water everywhere. We've got a sister church in West Plains called Genesis Church. And I've put it out to them, said, hey, let us know if we can serve you in any way. And so if you're interested in doing outreach or anything like that, as that comes along, just be watching Facebook. We'll make it aware to you where we can actually plug in, put some boots on the ground, and help out some of these people. We were at a church last night here locally pushing water out so that they could have services this morning. And so there's a lot. The Bible talks about the rain, and it uses it typically in reference to blessing. And so, we've been blessed, huh? Our cup runneth over, baby. So just be thankful that you're dry, thankful that you're in the house of God this morning. We're going to celebrate today. We're going to preach today on the red letters, and I'm excited about this series so much so because I think a lot of times we just miss the simple truth of what Jesus said. Now, when I say simple, like I said last week, simple doesn't mean easy. It just means it's simple. It means that you don't get to walk away going, I don't get it. When Jesus spoke, he spoke in a way that we would get it. And so what a great thing to be able to kind of unpack some of the stuff that he spoke. And today, we're going to be in John chapter 5, if you want to turn over there. It's one of the first passages that I ever preached as a preacher was this passage of Scripture. And I'm going to go out a little different today. But let me ask this question. How many of you would say you have good vision? Put them up. If you got good vision, put it up. How many of you would say that you have poor vision? Put it up. Okay? How many of you have had your vision corrected by a lens or a surgery? I'm at the age now, I've had a prescription for glasses for going on maybe 2.5 months. And I still haven't got it because I'm a little bit stubborn and I can still get far enough away from stuff to read it. Okay? That's where I'm at right now. How many of you would say you have good perception? That's different. How many of you husbands would say you have better perception than your wife does? Scaredy cats, okay? How many of you wives say your perception is better? And maybe what I'm saying is that when you're able to look at something and perceive it as it actually is rather than maybe not. I have my wife and I, we struggle with the same perception on some stuff. If I go in and I clean the kitchen, I perceive that it's clean. My wife's perception is somewhat skewed from my perception in regards to that. It's the same way if you have children, you've ever had kids and you've told them to clean your room and they come out and go, hey, we cleaned it, it's good. And you go on there and the peanut butter sandwich is still stuck to the bottom side of the pillow and all kinds of stuff like that. The perception is different. I want to talk today about perception because vision and perception are two different things. And Jesus really, in the passage we're going to look at, we're going to be talking about 3 different people's perception of the same scenario that happens. And I want to unpack that. But before we do, when I read about perception, I wanted to make sure I had an understanding of it. And see, to simply see something is to say, well, I was out last night and I saw reds and blues, some purples, some oranges, some different things like that. I saw some color. But to perceive what that color was would be to say, I saw the most beautiful sunset. It means you have an understanding and an understanding of what it is that you saw. And I think that in the church today, a lot of things get mixed up because our perceptions are learned. We've learned certain things as we've grown up, and we've learned certain things, some lessons, maybe good, maybe bad, that have helped form our perception of the world that we live in. A lot of people have a perception about church. People will say, they'll go, I don't like traditional church. I'm like, that's kind of the wrong word, traditional church. What do you mean by that? It means you do the same thing all the time, every week, just do the same thing all the time. Real life's so different. I'm like, really? We're so different? We're like, yeah, they're so different. Our music's big. We got black ceilings, and it's awesome. We don't have black ceilings in this one. We had them in the other one. I'm like, do you realize that in real life we do the same thing every week? What do you mean? We usually sing 3 or 4 songs. I preach. We take the offering. I give an announcement, and we leave. It's the same thing every week. I know some of you are like, oh, I go to a traditional church. Yeah, you just go to a cool one. So, I'm just kidding. And so we have this idea, our perception makes stuff sometimes what it isn't necessarily. And so I want to show you this video, and it's going to take a little bit of time. It's about 2 minutes long. But I want to show you this gentleman that has limited visual experience. But then something changes his perception. So here we go.
Don't break it.
Froze. Oh no. Let it go.
Color for the colorblind. I am colorblind.
I don't know.
Now, these are special glasses.
That he's just been gifted some special glasses that gives color to the colorblind. That he'll be able to see as all his kids see, because he's a colorblind man. He looked at it and he said, well, I am colorblind. And they started explaining, and I didn't want to make sure you didn't miss that as we go on and we see kind of what happens next.
You get to see color just like we all see.
Like these colors.
And it came with balloons and all that.
Oh my goodness. I can put these on.
Yeah, it'll
You'll see
Is
color
it like it was supposed to be?
like how we don't see it.
it'll
Yeah.
correct your eyes so that you'll see how it's supposed to see it.
It's so clear I can't believe it.
Dad, do you hate it?
See the balloon color?
Papa, look at the hat.
Oh
Yeah,
my
look at your
god.
hat.
Not pink, is it? God, where did you get this idea from?
Oh my, look at that red. Oh, shoot.
Oh, that's such a great.
That's a good one. I'm a
color pop.
good. Gosh, that's a good choice, my man. That.
What balloon?
Look at that.
What?
Oh, that has to do the volume right here. The very top, right? See how the sun goes down in there like that? Yeah, you know, oh my god.
You couldn't see that without it.
It was fuzz and haze. It wasn't like
Oh, it
a distinct
you
ray.
didn't know what it was.
I love this video simply because we can understand it. You say, Vince, I'm not colorblind, I can't understand it. Well, I'm not colorblind either. I can't understand the physical part of it, what happened to him, but when Jesus came in, my entire perception changed. It changed everything. Now, I'll admit, it was just like this man as he put on the glasses, and all of a sudden, all that was gray and all that was bland and all became vivid and had color and detail that he had missed before. I love the image that he says when he sees the sun rays coming down, but he had never noticed them before because it was just kind of gray and fuzzy, but now he could see it clearly. And I think so many times our perception as believers ought to be so much different than the world that's around us. We ought to see in more vivid colors. We ought to see people as they are and what they could be rather than maybe what they've been in the past. And that's really tough. It takes the eyes of Christ to be able to do that. My favorite picture in this video is he's sitting there when he's outside. I love the fact that he looks at his Florida hat and he's like, oh no, that's not what he said, but he should have. But he's sitting there and he looks over and in the back he sees his granddaughter. And she's got the pretty red shirt on. And that's when he puts his hand to his mouth and it just overwhelms him because he saw her finally as she was meant to be seen. I think our perception matters. I believe that we get in a rut with our perception. And I want to talk just about three different perceptions in the same story found in the book of John, chapter 1, or chapter 5. We're going to start with verse 1. And it says this, and afterward Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days, and inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda. The word Bethesda means mercy, and he says it has 5 covered porches, crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and he knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." And Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath, so the Jewish leaders objected. They said to the man who was cured, "You can't work on the Sabbath. The law does not allow you to carry that sleeping mat." But he replied, "The man who healed me told me, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" "Well, who said such a thing as that?" they demanded. Now, we just read through 12 verses there, and I'm going to come back and unpack them a little bit as we get into the body of the sermon. But we're going to look at 3 different perceptions, and I want to just kind of unpack one at a time. The first perception that we're going to look at is the lame man, the man. We don't even get his name. We don't know who he is. We don't get any backstory on him other than for 38 years he's laid there lame. No power, no strength, just without. And as I said, this was one of the first texts that I ever preached. And as I preached it early on, I would preach this as the saddest scripture in all of Scripture. This man sitting there by the pool, and Jesus says, "Would you like to be made well?" And he says, "I can't because I have no one." And I used to read that, and I used to go, man, I know just Jesus' heart is breaking right now because this man has no one. Nobody to help him put him in the water. Come on, can't you just find one person that'll help you get in the pool? Man, how sad is this gentleman that he's got no one? That's how I read it. That's how I preached it for a lot of years. But then I kept reading the text and kept picking up on some things that this man had allowed to happen. What this man had allowed to happen was that his condition had become his comfort zone. And it allowed him to make excuses rather than to take responsibility. If you'll notice in what the man says, he says, "I can't. For I have no one to put me in the water when the water bubbles up. And then when I do get close, somebody else always gets there ahead of me." There's always somebody else. And he's not taking any ownership in the idea that, have you asked anyone else? Have you reached out and said, "Hey, bro, can you give me a hand to the water? Can you?" And he doesn't do any of that. We just see him constantly saying, "Hey, I don't have any, no one else is helping me, and someone else always gets there before me." And you say, "Vince, that's a little harsh. I mean, he's the lame guy. He's the one that's broken." I mean, you can't really call him out for being broken. He didn't have any, it wasn't his fault that he was lame. Now make sure that you understand what I'm saying today. I'm not criticizing the gentleman for being a lame man. That's just his situation and his condition in this life. The issue comes that even in your situation, no matter what you're dealing with in your situation, you and I have personal responsibility to say, you know what? There's something that I can do, that my perception needs to change. My perception needs to be stronger. My perception needs to be maybe just a little bit more positive, and then something good will come out of it. You've almost got to choose to make the right decision. How many of you are amazing morning people? Come on, put them up. All you morning people. I got 7 of you. How did the rest of you make it to the 10 o'clock? I'm amazed. How many of you are not morning people? Just like, if you could just start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and life would be good for you. I just can't understand that. I'm a person that when I get up or when I wake up, I'm typically ready to go. I'm typically ready. I mean, I just don't, it's not easy for me to lay in bed past 8 or 9 o'clock or even earlier typically for me. We've got a baby in the house now, and so I'm just up early, the kids' school and things like that. So it's kind of natural for me to get up early. Even on days I could sleep in, even if I sleep in, it's not like, some people will sleep till like noon. I'm like, what are you doing? Do you know how much you could get done before noon? And I know you're like, I got a lot done. Sleep is what I got done. I won the lottery in my dreams. I built a house in my dreams. I got so much. I'm not that way, and that's okay. But it's a perception thing. But when you get up, even if your morning is bad, which is not a true statement, because things that happen are relative to your attitude in which you receive them. So instead of getting ticked off and throwing stuff around the room when you stub your toe on the end of your bed, you should maybe thank Jesus that you have a bed. Now, that's going to take some work, I know. It's going to take a little time to get there. But perception. This man's perception, instead of going, you know what, this is where I am, and this is the situation that I'm in, and I've got to try to figure out a way to make the best of the situation I am. What he had done in his condition is he created this comfort zone that constantly put this idea and the responsibility on someone else to do it for him. No one's putting me in the water. No one, and usually someone else gets there before I do. Now, this is going to be a side note. I didn't preach this in the first service, but let me just tell you straight up. If you're around a bunch of broken people, you're going to start acting broken. If you're around a bunch of people that are emotionally broken, spiritually broken, it's a good chance you'll start acting that way and expecting that that's how life is. And I want you to see something, because I'm not done talking about this fellow. And I know some of you are mad at me because you're like, you're picking on the lame guy. That's all right. Jesus made a blind man walk to him one time, okay? Straight up, read it in the Bible. It's there. He told a blind man, come here. Think about that for a second. Okay, when you're Jesus, you can do that, but I see this man laying here, and as I said, I read that, and I always read it as a sad thing that he just doesn't have anybody. But then I realized that after 38 years, how did this guy not have any friends? How did he not have somebody on the mat next to him that he even talked to? He said he has nobody. Then he's isolated himself to this place where I have nobody, and I can always put it off on somebody else. And this perception proves itself as the story goes on, and like I said, we'll come back to him. But here's what I want to tell you. Regardless, maybe your condition isn't physical, maybe it is emotional, maybe it is spiritual, and you've kept telling yourself that I can't. I just can't do that. Any of you ever you do that? You say you can't before you actually attempt? If you have children, you know what this is like at dinner time. I don't like that. We've never had it before. I know, but I don't like it. How do you know? Because God gave me a superpower at birth that allowed me to taste things before I actually put them in my mouth. Some of your parents are mad because I just gave your kid their next excuse, but you need to try it. I don't want to try it. Why? Because I don't like it. Why? Because I perceive that I won't like it. That's what's happening. Some of you won't step into relationship with Christ. Some of you won't step into serving Jesus because you perceive it's more than it may actually be. I don't have time for that. And the excuses keep coming. I'm just so busy, and I just got this, and I just got that. And then God said, I'm not asking you to build the Titanic. I just want you to invite someone to church. I just want you to serve someone selflessly. I just want you to pour into somebody that needs a mentor. I just need your time and just a little bit of your talent. If you'll do that, but God, I can, because I've really got so much going on. And because I got so much going on, I really can't say yes to that. Since I won't say yes to that, I don't feel like I'm responsible for it. And we've just kept putting it off because of our condition, because of our circumstances. We've allowed that to become our comfort zone, and it's given us the no. It's given us an excuse. So here's the thing. Here's the sad part. Some of you have lived in that condition so long that you don't know anything but laying by the pool. And you won't. Not because you can't, but because you won't. Because you won't take a step of faith that says, you know what, I'm gonna step out here. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna try something. It may not be Bo that's playing lead guitar this morning. He stepped in this week. First time he's played with us at Real Life. He did an awesome job. You guys give Bo a hand this morning. He did a great job. I was talking to him in between services. He's like, I've been kind of freaking out. And I said, don't freak out. All the maintenance is already done. This is ministry today. Just let go. It's a good time. But because you put the work in, God will bless the effort. And that's what's happening. We're seeing that this morning. But I'm going to tell you something. God didn't give you the gift that you have so that you could talk about it. He gave you the gift that you have so you could do something with it. Our gifts are for the edification and the building of Christ's church. And so if you're not using it to edify and build God's church, you don't have a gift, you have a talent. They're different. I want to challenge you to step beyond the excuses this morning. Change your perception. Look inwardly. God, what would you have me do? What do you want from me, God? What would you have me do? And then give me the ability to step into it. Second group of people that I want to talk to, I love these guys. This is the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders of the day. I love these guys because I know so many of these people, and I don't know if any of you are here today and you're this person, but let's kind of unpack them a little bit. Here's what happened. Jesus heals this man. He says, rise, take up your mat, and walk. The man rolls up his mat, starts taking a walk immediately because this happened on the Sabbath. And I missed this. Verse 9, if you put it up, instantly the man was healed. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath, comma. A lot of times you'll read the Bible, and if you grew up in Sunday school, you read the Bible chapter, verse, chapter, verse, chapter, verse. Well, if you read chapter, verse, you can stop on verse 9 and not go to verse 10. The problem is the sentence doesn't end in verse 9. The sentence ends in verse 10. So we say, but this stuff happened on the Sabbath day. And I read that. So the Jewish leaders objected. They said to the man who was cured, you can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry your sleeping mat. Think about this for half a second. This man has been lame for 38 years, and the religious people completely miss the miracle and see the mat. They see the mat. Here comes our buddy, walking around, carrying a mat. What are you doing? Carrying a mat. You can't carry a mat. Why? Because it's Sabbath. But you don't understand. You don't understand what just happened. I haven't walked for 38 years, and I didn't even have a learning curve. I just got up and walked. There's more than one miracle that took place. It wasn't just the muscle and the tendons and everything not being an atrophy, but they worked, they functioned, and I didn't even have to learn to do it again. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to teach a kid to walk. It takes some time. There are some wobble moments. This dude didn't even have a wobble moment. He got up and walked. And he picks up his mat, and he starts carrying the mat, and the Jewish people go, hey, you can't do that. I grew up in church, and I can remember this. We'd see kids get saved at church. Man, just powerful stuff, tears flowing, snot dripping everywhere, just good times, all right? People getting saved, meeting Jesus after church. One of those kids would run through, and one of the people in the church would be like, don't run in the church! How come? Because it's the sanctuary of God, and we don't run in here. Completely missing the miracle that just happened. Did you notice in the video, the man, when he put on the perception, he had to take them off? Because it was too overwhelming. He'd put them on, then he'd take them off. He'd put them on, then he'd take them off. Because he couldn't, it was so much. How many of you in your first week or two of salvation were just nailing it like Apostle Paul? Got 2 of you, all right? The rest of you are real human beings. Because, no, sometimes it's a struggle. It's overwhelming to know this grace and this mercy, and you're like, but this is, I can't contain all this. And so sometimes you slip back into maybe what you used to be or what you used to do. And I've seen people do this. I've heard this come out of people's mouth where someone will come and testify, God's been so good to me. He's saved my soul. He's healed me from addiction. My marriage is restored. My kids are in church. But boy, every once in a while I just stumble and I cuss. And you need to clean your mouth up. If you don't, you need to get that part fixed. And they totally miss the miracle for the minute. I'm not saying the minute isn't sin. But I'm saying if you spend all your time pulling out the detail and not celebrating the win, you will be a lonely person. Because people are not going to want to hang out with you. They just won't. How many of you know negative people? Are they like who you want to invite to the ball game with you? I'm not saying not be realistic. There's reality that comes in. There's moments you have to be real and you have to confront things, and I understand that. This wasn't one of those situations. This was the religious people pointing out, because what they had done, I told you last week that the system that they had built was built somewhat on what God had built. God built this system, and he said, this is a good system. And so what they said, well, if this is good, we'll put this on it and 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 make it better. But what they did is they made it unattainable. They made it so confusing that people didn't know what to do. You can't even carry your mat. That's work? Is carrying my mat? Well, what else is work? Picking up. You couldn't pick up anything heavier than a kitchen utensil, or it was considered work on the Sabbath day. And instead of celebrating what the Sabbath was, which was a day to focus and to renew your relationship with God and to be able to soak him in, they spent all their time waiting for somebody to pick up something. What do you got? Is that a pot? No. Oh, no. Put the pot down. You should have put it on the stove this morning. Put your mat down. I haven't walked for 38 years. What do you want me to do with it? I don't care that you haven't walked. Put the mat down. You totally missed. Some of you right now, you're missing the miracles that God has been performing in your life because you're so focused on the next wrong thing. That's right. You're waiting for the moment you get to pounce on somebody because they messed up. And all that really is you trying to feel better about maybe some of the shortcomings that you have. And that's tough. And it's not necessarily all your fault because we live in a culture, I mean, there's a job out there called risk management. Like their whole job is to sit around and think of stuff that just might happen. So some people would be awesome at that job, right? Like, well, this could happen. This could happen. What if? Any what ifers in the house? Yeah, some of you can't sleep at night because you what if so much. Anxiety eats you alive, doesn't it? It's tough. I want to just challenge you. Celebrate some of the miracles that are happening out there. Yeah, people are stumbling. People are putting the glasses on and taking them off. And sometimes it takes a little while. That's what I love about this video. When I saw it, I just cried like a baby because I cry. And I'm man enough to admit it. I can watch a commercial, like an infomercial, and I'm like, that's awesome. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like somebody could win a new vacuum, and I'm like, they got a new vacuum. And so just pray for me, or pray for my wife. She has to put up with me being this emotional. But in the video, you'll see him. He puts them on, and he takes them off for a little while, and he's looking around. He's trying to get his bearings. But by the end of the video, you notice he doesn't take them off. He's living in it. Look at the colors. Look at that. He's watching Angry Birds, and he's like, whoa, look at that red. Look at that green. Did you see that? Look at the sun rays coming down through there. Before I couldn't see them clearly. But you see, I had vision before, but my perception has been changed. This man had vision. He could see, but his perception of everything was, someone else needs to help me. Someone else needs to do this for me. And the religious leaders, they were in the same situation. Their condition had become their comfort zone. The problem is it was just different. Their perception was, you're doing this all wrong. You're messing it up. You're doing it wrong. What am I doing right? That doesn't matter because you're doing all this wrong. You can't do it wrong. And what they said was, well, we can't do it right either, but if we can point it out in enough other people, then we won't feel so bad about ourselves. But then there was another perception. We see it at the top of our story. Verse 1 of John chapter 5. It says, and afterward Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city near the sheep gate was a pool called Bethesda, called Mercy. And at this pool there were 5 covered porches. And on these porches lay the blind, people with no vision, the lame, people with no hope. 38 years. Why would I hope for something different now? Paralyzed, people with no power. And there sat a man who had been lame for 38 years. When Jesus saw him. I told you I'd come back to the lame man. The Pharisees had said, hey, you're not allowed to carry your mat. It's the Sabbath day, put your mat down. You'd think that the lame man would have said something like, hey, I haven't walked in 38 years. I'll drop the mat. You can have the stinking mat. I'm going to run somewhere. But he didn't, and this is where we see more of his condition. He said, put your mat down. The lame man said, the person that healed me told me to carry it. He's still putting it on someone else. It's his fault. He told me to carry it. I wouldn't have carried it, but he told me to. I know I'm healed and I should be all good now, but he told me to carry it. We know this is an issue because Jesus, see, the man didn't know who he was. He didn't say, hey, I'm Jesus and I'm about to heal you. But Jesus comes back to the man. The Bible, if you keep reading past verse 12, we see that the man is sitting in temple, and Jesus, I don't know how it happens, but Jesus comes up near to him and says, hey, you've been made whole, and you need to quit sinning lest something worse falls upon you. So we know this was a real issue within the man. That's why I think it's so important that we see this verse where it says, Jesus saw him. He looked beyond the lame body. He looked beyond the physical. And he looked into his heart and said, there's some issues here that need to be fixed. There's some responsibility that's not being taken. There's some reality this guy needs to be checked with. And it says that he saw him and he asked him a simple question. Would you like to get well, or would you like to be made well? Which, let me change the question a little bit for you, and it may make some more sense. He says, would you like something better? Because you've done it for 38 years. You can live in this perception if you want, where it's his fault, or it's their fault, or it's somebody, maybe even my fault, but it's not your fault, obviously, that you're not changing your attitude and your perception about what's happening. But would you like something better? Would you like something better than what you've lived in? Would you like something greater than what you've experienced? Would you like to see some things clearly rather than all muddied with this lack of responsibility, with this ability to excuse everything? Would you like something better? Pastor Vince, I've got this in my past and I've got this in my past and I just can't get over. Would you like something better? What amazes me is that the lame man's answer wasn't just simply yes. Jesus asked him, would you like to be made well? Would you like to be healed? Obvious answer, right? You betcha. Come on with it. Let's do this thing. Whatever your name is, if you can offer it, I'm buying. Let's go. I'd have ran through a list of all kinds of things just exactly like that. But this man says, I can't. Jesus didn't ask him, will you make yourself better? Can you make yourself better? That's not the question that Jesus asked. Jesus says, would you like to be better? Would you like to be healed? This man had all the power in himself to answer the question. He just chose a different perception. He said, I can't. I don't have anybody. Nobody will put me in the water, and then somebody usually gets there first. Jesus, I can almost see him going, it's not what I ask you. I just ask if you want to be better, if you want something better for your life. And the answer is simply yes. Stop making excuses. Just say yes. To the religious leaders, stop picking everybody apart and just say yes to something better. Maybe you're here today and when God moves, you start going, whoa, I can't. In reality, you won't. And he's got something better for you. See, Jesus did two things. He saw the man, and then he engaged. This is the grace of Jesus right here, the grace of God, this right here in this scripture. Because it says, would you like to be made whole? And the man says, I can't because I have no one to put me in the pool. And if I get close, somebody always gets there first. Jesus said, get up, get your mat, and go. Stand up and walk, pick up your mat and go. That's grace, because the man didn't answer the question, but Jesus' grace answered for him. I wonder today if you're here, and maybe you've just been offering excuse after excuse after excuse of why you can't. Now, I don't know what the request is. I don't know what God is leading you into or calling you into. Maybe I can't because I got this, or I got this, or I got that. And, you know, God, it's just so crazy, and I don't need to know that. And I'm not even beating you up for having stuff. We all have stuff. My question is, isn't the simple answer to Jesus simply yes? Will you? Yeah. Yeah, I will. Some of you would have been, if Jesus would have asked you, would you like to be whole? You'd have said, well, I don't know. I've never walked before, so it's going to take a little bit of time for me to actually be able to walk. I'm not sure if I want to put that much time into the investment of learning how to walk again, Jesus, so I think I'm good. Jesus said, I didn't ask you if you wanted to learn how to walk. I didn't ask you if you wanted to learn not how to trip. I just asked you if you wanted to be whole. I just asked you if you wanted something better than what you currently have.